comes to game consoles, there's a lot of mixed reviews out there about the 3DO. Me, myself, I had never played one growing up, but I'd always wanted one. I read about them in video game magazines, and they always looked pretty cool. They always looked way more awesome than the 16-bit stuff I had at home. And there's some really good ports of arcade games that are on the system. So I've always wanted to try one. I finally got my hands on one about 6 months ago, and I've had a chance to play through all the games, and I want to take the time to review it. There's a lot of mixed reviews, and I think that I want to go ahead and throw my hat into the ring.
They call me loser because they love to spread hate. They call me stupid because I didn't graduate. I'm only what I need, certified GED. They call me out because I like to...
Now, I'm not going to go through a ton of hardware talk about this thing, but I will say this thing was released in '94. There was 3 variants of it, the Sanyo, the Panasonic, and the Gold Star. I have the Gold Star for no other reason than I got the best deal on this one. I wasn't partial. I would have took any of them as long as they played the games well. This thing has a very 90s like VCR kind of feel to it. It's really heavy for a console. It's only got 1 controller port, and the second controller plugs into the first controller port. It is not the big deal people say it is. People will complain about it online and whatnot, but having played a bunch of 2-player games with people on there, it's not an issue at all. It's quite a solid system though. Alright, now let's get to the games. Now, in the first lot that I got when I bought the thing on eBay, I got a handful of games with it, and they all came in these standard cases. And they're all pretty nice. They were in great shape. I got Slam Jam 95, Phoenix 3, John Madden Football, Wing Commander 3, Killing Time, Snow Job, Soccer, Slayer, and the Need for Speed, which the very first time I ever opened this game up, I snapped it. Right there. I've literally never snapped a disc opening it up in my life. So I guess there's a first for everything. Some other ones I picked up along the way. Crash and Burn, that came with a lot. So did PGA Tour 96. I got Gex. Had to get that one. People said it was pretty good. Samurai Showdown. Way of the Warrior, which I'd always wanted to play after reading about it in magazines as a kid. And the Holy Grail, Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo. Alright, let's give this thing a shot. Start off with a little bit of Super Street Fighter 2 action. Up first, we have Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo, and I wanted to start with the best for first. This is by far the best game that I've played on this console by a mile. The graphics on this are amazing. The sound on this is amazing. And I've played every version of Street Fighter 2 that you could have possibly played on every console, and this one here, it beats every one of them. It's the same Super Street Fighter 2 that everybody knows and loves and has all your favorite characters and plays through the same way, but the presentation of it is as good as you're going to get without standing in an arcade throwing quarters into a machine. Now, I have this running through a HDMI upscaler, and it looks absolutely beautiful on my TV. If I've got anything to nitpick about it, it would be that the 3DO controller is not really optimal for this game here. But if you know Street Fighter and love Street Fighter and have played the crap out of it over the years, then you'll be just fine. You can play through the game. But everything about it is completely amazing. If you have a 3DO and you don't have this game, you're missing out. If you don't like fighting games, this is still a great game to have. If you love Street Fighter and you've never played this version, then you are missing out. Up next, we have a port of Samurai Showdown, and again, this is the best port I've played of this game. Now, I've never played any of them on the Neo Geo home consoles or anything, so I can't speak about those, but as far as compared to the Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis versions, this game is far superior. This is another game that looks absolutely beautiful, and the system really makes it stand out. I've always been a big fan of Samurai Showdown. I played it as a kid a lot. Whenever you seem to see a Neo Geo arcade unit, this game was always in it. I always thought that the characters fighting with the swords and whatnot was pretty cool, and when I saw it, I got pretty exciting. Now, one of the things I think is really nice about the 3DO compared to other systems is that as far as this game goes, it does load, as you see here, but the loading times aren't horrible. I've played other systems where the loading was far worse. But the presentation here, absolutely great. If you like fighting games, this is definitely one to own. It's a bit slower paced, I think, than, say, Street Fighter or maybe some of the earlier Mortal Kombats, but it's definitely one you should own if you own the system. Up next, we have Wave the Warrior from Naughty Dog, and I might get flamed for this, but I actually like this game. I thought it was pretty cool. As a kid, I always saw thumbnails of it in magazines, and I always wanted to give it a try. I thought it would end up being pretty cool. Now, I do still think it's pretty cool, but it's definitely not without flaw. First thing I want to say is the characters in this game are pretty awful. It seems like the developers had their buddies come over with whatever was in their closet and put something together. The jumping in this game, every time your characters jump, they jump to the ceiling. The controls in this game are just completely terrible. The hit detection is a joke. This game ends up getting really hard, and it's not for any good reason. The game gets hard because the controls are so broken. The moves are pretty dumb. The fatalities, which, you know, was a big selling point of these kind of games in the 90s, they're all pretty awful too. The music, which some people think was pretty cool, that metal music from White Zombie, after about 5 minutes, that all starts to sound the same and it runs together and it becomes more annoying than anything else. But I do like it, and I think the graphics are, even now, I still think they're pretty cool. I think the game was ambitious. I think it was imaginative. Even for its faults, it still comes across as pretty cool to me. And it's one of those games that it's so bad that I think it's good. It's definitely a fun party game. It's a 3DO exclusive, so if you have a 3DO, it's definitely worth it to get, considering it's not real expensive. And if anything, you're going to end up getting a laugh out of just how bad it is. This is Gex the Gecko, and this one here is a very, very average run-of-the-mill platformer starring a wisecracking gecko. Now this game here, I played through this a bit, and you know, to be honest with you, I don't have a whole lot to say about it. This game is very, very average. Nothing too special about this one. Now, it is in no way, shape, or form a bad game, but it's definitely nothing to get excited and write home to your mom about. Although at the same time, being that the library of games for this system, most of them aren't that great, this is definitely one I would recommend picking up if you're going to collect for the system. This is Advanced Dungeons & Dragons Slayer. And this one here is a first-person, I guess you would call it adventure RPG kind of game. Starts off, you pick a character, you do a couple other things, then it kind of thrusts you into it. And this game here, I spent a couple hours playing it, kind of wandering around. I didn't really know where to go and what to do, but even with that, I found myself somewhat enjoying the game. It's definitely a game that in the future, when I have time to devote to it, I'll probably get my hands on like an online strategy guide and see if I can kind of find my way through it. This is definitely a game that, with the library of 3DO games being what it is, I would definitely recommend giving this one a shot. I didn't review all of my games. Some of the games I didn't review simply because I didn't really feel like even playing them. Some of them are so forgettable and just blah that they, even for the sake of a review, I just passed over. As far as Madden football goes and say Slam Jam 95, those games are okay at best, but there's so much better alternatives even on your 16-bit consoles. I felt there was no need to review those for the sake of. Here we have Killing Time from 3DO Studios, or Studio 3DO, or whatever they want to be called. And this one here is a full motion video first-person shooter type game. One thing that was kind of cool about it was that the full motion video sequences, as you see here, they were real seamless. They kind of would just happen. It didn't slow anything down. Overall, the game was okay at best. One thing about this kind of game and some of these earlier games like this, after I play it for a while, I'd end up getting kind of motion sick. And once I got into the mansion, I had no idea where to go. Now, later on, I guess I could pick up a instruction manual or, you know, online guide or whatnot and kind of figure my way through it. But overall, it was one that I played a couple times and I never really got all that excited about. I was kind of whatever about the thing. And This is one that, even though I'm not a huge fan, I did give it several times. So who knows? Maybe I'll play it again in the future. I'm not real sure. This, friends, is Crash and Burn, and this was actually the very first game that came out for the system. The only game that was available on launch day, from what I've read. And considering that on launch day, in some places this system was $699, I can only imagine a level of disappointment that people had from getting home and popping this sucker in. There's some cool parts to it, because you got to remember, 1993, these graphics are, the cars look pretty cool and stuff. There's some full motion video parts where some of the other drivers will talk some smack to you when you're picking a track, and whoever you pick has got something to say. But overall, it's kind of like a battle racer. It's really not that good, and it's definitely not one that I would recommend unless you were getting some sort of smoking deal on it. There is a million of other racing games out there that are far, far better than this. She's sexy, smart, savvy. No wonder she fills your dreams. No wonder she's #1 on the hit list of a notorious drug lord. Tracy Scoggins is the long arm and legs of the law. That description is more exciting than any point of this game. This game here is Snow Job, and no matter what its suggestive cover and hot main chick are like in this game, this is one of those point and click games, which I'm not really a big fan of anyway. But this one here, I had no idea what to do in this one. This one, nothing about it was exciting, and it was almost a chore to play. I decided to include this one in my review today because it was the worst game I played. This thing was an absolute stinker. I would not recommend this one. The only way I'd recommend having this in your collection is if you got it for free from somewhere, and that was about it. Alright, so my top 5 for this system, as far as number 5 would be Slayer. It was not by any means the best game I ever played, but just interesting enough to make me want to continue playing, and I think I will. Number 4, Way of the Warrior. If for nothing else, this is a great party game to play. It's got its share of things wrong with it, but it's definitely worth playing. If you own a 3DO, you're crazy not to have it. Number 3, Gex. By no means the best platformer I've ever played. By no means even one of the great platformers of that generation. But as far as that system goes, it's still pretty solid. Number 2, Samurai Showdown. It's a great port. It plays really well. I enjoyed it quite a bit. And number 1, you saw this coming, Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo. As far as in that era, that is by far the best port of that game that you can get your hands on. And they said that for years, and I read it in all sorts of places, and that's one game that they weren't lying about. They certainly didn't let anybody down. If you have it, it's the killer app. It's definitely the game to have. Now, overall, my final verdict on a 3DO is it's okay. It's okay at best. The pros is that Street Fighter 2 Turbo is amazing. Samurai Showdown is pretty great. The loading times for the system aren't really too bad at all. I was pretty impressed with that. It definitely are a lot better than the Sega CD. Even some of the Saturn games I played, the good games, they do play well, and the controller feels good. But on the flip side, one of the cons is the 3-button controller is not great for fighting games. There are the shoulder buttons, but it still isn't as good as maybe a 6-button controller. And there's only a couple of decent titles. That's definitely a con if you were going to invest in a system like that. Alright, so that's all I've got to say about the 3DO for now. Now, is there any games that I maybe have missed that you've played that my life is seriously lacking from having never popped in my system? Make sure you let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe to my videos. We're a new channel. We're going to be producing new content about video games, fitness, nerdy things, everything under the sun. So make sure you stay tuned. More stuff's coming, and we'll see you then.